Hello, everybody. This is Christina.
And Anthony.
And thank you for listening to Phenomenon, a Paranormal Podcast. To all our regular listeners, we thank you for bearing with our absence. It's been a little bit since we've posted a new episode, and we thought we'd explain a little bit about why that is.
Yeah, you may have noticed it's been a few months here since we posted. We had been posting regularly, but our house did sadly get hit with COVID. We had some health issues back and forth with a couple of our family members, and it's kind of taken us away from being able to go and record the podcast. But now we're here. It's the end of the year. We're starting to finally feel better a little bit and up to getting together and recording this. So
we're officially back. Hopefully this will be a regular occurrence again. And again, thanks for being patient. And to the new listeners, welcome. And we are going to dive into a popular paranormal topic.
Something we've always wanted to talk about, and it's always been something on our minds because it's real popular with a lot of online paranormal investigators, and especially one major paranormal investigator that's kind of stormed the headlines.
Right. So here we go. We're going to be talking about the Dybbuk box.
Yeah.
And, we will give a little history here for anyone who's maybe either heard the term Dybbuk box and maybe doesn't fully know what it is or know the history, or if you don't know anything at all, I'll explain a little bit about it. The original Dybbuk box, this goes back to this story, which is a true story of a man who he went to an estate sale, and he, I guess, bid on a lot of items. And one of those items in the lot was a wine box that I think had a little lock on it, if I'm not mistaken. And the story that he was given by two of the older women in the family was that this was a Dybbuk box. Now, a Dybbuk in the Jewish culture is a spirit which oftentimes was considered to be malevolent.
Yeah.
And again, we have to keep in mind when we talk about this stuff that a lot of things are based in folklore. In every culture, I think you have something that older relatives will tell children to scare them in certain ways.
Get them to behave, kind of.
Exactly. We're Hispanic. If there's anyone out there listening that's Hispanic, you know who the cucuy is.
Yeah, we were told that all the time by our grandparents. And
right. If you don't behave, the cucuy is going to come and get you.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Well, a Dybbuk spirit essentially is very similar in this fashion in the Jewish culture.
Now, originally, it is noted that the malevolent spirit was never said to be demonic. It was a spirit, a person,
a trickster.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
So again, this is what he was told by these women, that there was the spirit of a Dybbuk inside this wine case, as told to them by their mother.
Yeah.
And that you were never to open it. That is, something was done and put in there with him to trap him in this box, and that you should leave it alone, never open it.
Yeah.
So, of course, he took this with a grain of salt. Yeah. And if anyone wants to look it up, this man, and his name is Kevin Mannis, and this all happened in Portland, Oregon. And he had an old sort of antique store, secondhand store, and he, came home, put this in, storage in the store, and apparently the story goes that all sorts of strange things start to happen, bad things start to happen. His mother has a stroke shortly after he gives it to her at one point. So he's, starting to believe this story given to him by the original owners or the family, and feels like this is not something that he wants to keep around.
Yeah.
He then puts it up for auction on eBay, right?
Of course.
And so it ends up selling. I would have to look it up. We can maybe put this in the notes if I can find it. How much it sold for, but marketing is everything, as they say. So of course when he sold it, the whole story of the Dybbuk in the box was given, and probably very much as a selling point, I'm just going to say. But, according to him, all the events that happened actually happened. Bad luck and whatnot with his mother's health. And so, of course, this item sold for a decent amount on eBay and has since then been auctioned on eBay more than once until it finally went to a gentleman that, was very interested in it, and he was a professor, I believe. And when the last person who had the box went to sell it, ended up selling it to this person who wanted to, investigate it, keep it. Apparently reported all sorts of health issues coming on in his life thereafter and strange things. And he supposedly ended up putting it in a safe place where no one would know where it was but him, but away from his house, his family, until it finally went to, big surprise, Zach Baggins and his museum.
Yeah, of course.
Where it currently sits today.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to just reserve all my comments on Zach Baggins and his museum.
Yeah.
No offense to any of our listeners out there who might like him.
Just our opinion.
Right.
Everyone's welcome to their opinion.
Sure.
But we won't say anything.
Absolutely.
Here.
So that's where it is. If you want to go see it, Zach has it. Knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
To me, it's almost like the paranormal community's answer to the telephone game.
Right.
Because it started out, as this malevolent spirit told to them from these two women's grandmother, sold to this guy. But ever since, every time it's moved from one person to another, the legend and the story seems to have grown exponentially.
Of course. I mean, of course, this particular original scenario was the basis for the film The Possession,
right?
Which was based on this story of him going to the estate sale and the whole 9 yards. But of course, Hollywood embellishes it, and it possesses the young girl in the family, and all sorts of things. So
it's been featured in a lot of paranormal shows too.
Absolutely,
like Ghost Story and
right,
stuff like that. So it's been around for a while, since 2001.
Right. So this brings us though to some more modern things here, and this is why we bring it up, because it's actually created an entire Dybbuk box phenomena.
Yes. And
what this is now is that there isn't just the Dybbuk box.
Multiple now.
There are Dybbuk boxes dropping out of the sky, and especially on eBay and whatnot.
They're hot sellers on eBay. I mean, you go on eBay and search, and you'll see thousands of them.
Of course, and of course, none of them are cheap, and some, it's spawned a whole culture in and of itself with, as we mentioned, paranormal investigators or shows, which Anthony's going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But also even young YouTubers who do things like, okay, I'm going to buy a Dybbuk box, and tells his followers that they're going to open it on camera and see what happens, and they film their whole series based on this, phenomena. So Anthony here is going to dive in a little bit on this.
Yes, and I'll tell you to find that photo you
took, yeah,
but
absolutely.
I'm going to talk about this ongoing thing on a show that we were directed to. We always try and find some good paranormal shows to watch on YouTube or online somewhere. Just try and see the people who are pushing the paranormal these days. And one group of people that we've come to like to watch and enjoy, and their technique is Haunt Me. Right. You may have heard of these investigators. They're based out of Maine. They have their own web series called Haunt Me. The cast has kind of changed over the years, but essentially they're the same people. And we actually came across them because investigators that we always respect, Greg and Dana Newkirk, have talked about the show before,
right, and
have also been on multiple episodes. Now, the reason they came into play is because of reported Dybbuk box. There's an episode in season 3, episode 6, where they went to what was called Mexico High School. This was still in Maine, but it was called Mexico High School. And they had a guest investigator on with them whose name was Corey Heinzer. He's a paranormal investigator.
I think Hei.
Heinzen,
yeah,
there you
Heinzen, go.
Yeah. He was on the show, and he brought with him a haunted artifact, which he said was a Dybbuk box. He said that, of course, like most of these cases, he got it at an estate sale. That not even him. I think he said a friend of his got it in a estate sale, and then the friend gave it to him.
And can I just say that I thought that was very convenient.
They're always at estate sales.
It's an estate sale, which is the original story.
Yes.
So that's just my opinion, but go ahead.
So they take this Dybbuk box to this high school, and their spirit box sessions and EVP sessions seem to get some very dark, kind of scary responses for the investigators. And of course, the investigators are not as familiar with the Dybbuk box as a lot of people are. So they're kind of taking this guy's story, at face value and investigating, but they're still holding judgment. They're waiting to see. They invite him back to another episode in season 4, I believe, where they go to the Parsonsfield home. Yeah, Parsonsfield Seminary. And he brings the box again. Now, his story is that through his own spirit box sessions, he has gotten a name for whatever entity supposedly lives inside this Dybbuk box, called Paimon. Now, I don't know how familiar anyone is with demonology or, religion as a whole, but Paimon is one of the higher kind of dukes of hell, higher ups within the culture there. So he claims that Paimon is in this box, that's who he's talking to. So
now, mind you, this is really it's contradicts what a Dybbuk box actually is supposed to be,
which is a malevolent spirit.
A spirit, not a demon of any kind.
But of course, this is what this guy is saying, that's what the evidence he has gathered is showing him.
Right.
So he brings it up to Parsonsfield Seminary, and they get more kind of scary evidence. Voices coming through, shadows kind of creeping around them, feeling like they're being touched, that kind of thing. Very personal. So, because these investigators happen to have befriended Greg and Dana Newkirk, and they know they work with haunted objects, they asked this guy if it would be okay if they studied it, and he said sure. So the Newkirks took the object, and they spent a few months studying it, working with it, doing what they know how to do. They even took it to get an MRI done to see what was inside the box without actually opening it.
They're very thorough.
They took this box to a convention. Actually, it was given to them at a convention by this guy because they were there with the Haunt Me crew. They actually had Grant Wilson there as well, who many of you know is a well-known paranormal investigator. And there was a lot of weird things going on there. John Tenney was there. So Greg and Dana took it. They investigated it. Well, season 5 comes, and it's the very first episode of season 5 where they go back to the GRCC, the Greater Rumford Community Center in Maine. This is a place the Haunt Me crew has gone many times, and before they investigated this place, they decided to bring the Newkirks in because they had their findings. Well, this is where things get interesting. This is where our opinion on the Dybbuk box comes into play, because it really does make a lot of sense.
Right. They were bringing it back actually to give back to this Corey Heinzen.
Yeah, because they invited Corey Heinzen back to the investigation. Well, they bring the box back, and Greg and Dana had insisted on doing this revelation with the investigator, Corey, so that they can tell him the truth. According to them, long story short, they don't believe Paimon or any demon of any kind exists in this box. From their own spirit box sessions, their own EVP sessions, what they found is that they believe this is an intentional haunting, which is a third kind of haunting that really doesn't get talked about quite as often, which really fascinates us. Right. Because it involves us as people. Well, this intentional haunting pretty much, because this box is so, feared, because so many people are scared of what could be inside of this box, every person who has come into contact with the box has been feeding their own fears, their own, insecurities, their own whatever, into the box, to the point where all this energy is growing and attaching and building until it gains its own self-awareness. Right. It becomes self-aware. Exactly. Now, does this mean that the box doesn't have anything with it? No. But what they found was, because this thing was created by people and not something already attached to it, it was kind of giving the basic Hollywood version of a demonic presence, to the point where it was kind of ridiculous. And there was nothing to back up these claims. It was just, scary things being said for the sake of being scary.
Right, over the top sort of.
Yeah. What they called it was psychokinetic energy, or fear energy, being fed into this box.
Right.
So, the guy, Corey, claims that this was given to a friend of his at an estate sale. He says he's never opened the box, and that Paimon came through on a spirit box session he did several times. Of course, Greg and Dana worked very tirelessly on this box, and they never got the name Paimon to come through whatsoever. And they didn't know if it was because they weren't expecting the name Paimon, or if it was just never there.
Right.
But they think that this thing was built, it was grown by people investigating and putting their own fears about what could be in the box into it.
And, when it comes to intentional hauntings, that is something that's not just limited to something like a Dybbuk box.
No.
This can happen in any location. If you have a location that's reputed to be haunted and you have a lot of different people going in to investigate it.
Yeah.
And you'll see this if you watch any sort of paranormal shows, whether it be on YouTube or, wherever else.
Yeah.
They tend to go to the same places because those are the places that are known to be quote unquote haunted.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of people going in with some level of expectation because they know the background of a place. And when you have a lot of different people coming in and trying to use their investigative techniques to draw things out, they're also putting their intention in.
Right.
So that's something to really think about as investigators when you're going into a place. It's like what you're going to put out there into it when you're doing your different techniques, could actually stir things up.
Yeah, we've all heard these stories. And if you close your eyes, you can hear yourself having heard this story. But you go to a haunted home, let's say. You're told a story that a father killed his wife and kids in the home and then took his own life. We've all heard a story like this. You go into this house expecting to be scared. All of a sudden, you start hearing running footsteps coming towards you. You start hearing wailing screams.
Right.
Yet, if you take the time to actually look at the history of the home, you actually find that that story you've been told never happened.
Right.
This is just a home.
Exactly.
And some sort of story was told, and like the telephone game gets passed down until this legend grows.
Right.
About the home, and the wife haunts the home to this day. Kind of thing, the lady in white, the lady in black,
right?
But that's 9 times out of 10. You can see so many people visiting the same location over and over again. It makes this a reality.
Exactly.
We create our own reality in a sense, and we are made of energy,
right?
And if we expend energy and put it into a location with a specific intent, that is going to make a lasting impression on the environment.
Of course. I mean, there are two things here. And I think with everything you just said, sometimes I think the argument can be made that if you're going to investigate a place, you go in cold first without knowing a backstory.
Yeah.
Without knowing what they've experienced there.
Yeah.
Because, you could say, okay, well, you need to go in and know as much as you can about the place. And, that can be a good technique, but if you go in cold, and you see what happens to you there without any expectation, is that more reliable?
Yeah.
I think sometimes for me that would be the case, but
I think that's why a lot of people caution too, even if you do know the history of a location, go in with a sense of calm.
Right.
Ground yourself always before you go into a location, and never go in expecting a specific action.
Right.
Because more times than not, you're going to get evidence that you think is verifying the claims, but if you're already expecting that evidence to happen, how do you trust it?
Right, of course.
I think that's where we're going with this is a good example of how to improve paranormal investigations going forward. We even saw this on the recent season of Ghost Hunters. They were called into this home of a woman who was getting some pretty scary ghost activity, and she had just bought this home. It was like her dream home, and she was getting scary voices, scary sounds, And yet when the team came in, nothing was happening.
Right.
But then they decided, okay, let's try something. They brought the homeowner in for an hour, and they just wanted to see what would happen if she came in. All of a sudden, all this activity started happening.
Right.
But you could see visibly on the camera, she was scared going into the home.
Mm-hmm.
She was terrified. And then all of a sudden, all the activity starts happening all around them.
Right.
And then she leaves again, and the activity stops.
Well,
I think that speaks clearly to the power of intention.
Well, I think you're right. And I think, when it comes to any type of haunting situation, we've talked a lot about the spirit box.
Yeah.
And what we've experienced doing sessions.
Yeah.
And one of our first episodes was about the quantum consciousness.
Yeah.
Which basically, for anyone who didn't listen to that episode, just the fact that once we pass, our physical bodies die,
Yeah.
that all of our energy and our memories that are, held in our brain, anything we've learned during the course of our life, that energy doesn't die.
Yeah.
It goes out into a collective consciousness that's out there,
Yeah.
that energy. So when we do the spirit box and we are getting responses, what we feel is that we're communicating with the energy that's out there of, our loved ones or other deceased persons that are left behind.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what the traditional, ghost or soul of a person or however you want to, whatever your belief is. But, it is known through physics, energy cannot die.
Cannot be destroyed or created.
Right.
It changes.
It changes its form, perhaps. There's a lot of energy out there that we can't see that we use every day.
Yeah.
So that is our belief. And when it comes to hauntings, it stands to reason that same energy is what is creating these scenarios where people feel like they're being haunted. And if you're bringing to a location yourself, any certain fears or, you have some sort of experience with maybe some residual energy, and then you start building up this fear rather than saying, oh, I wonder what that was, you're terrified of it, that's going to increase that energy. It's going to feed into it even more. So, we always kind of laugh and marvel at certain investigators on YouTube channels that'll go in there and they're going there to investigate this, and then something happens and they're absolutely terrified.
They're screaming, they're knocking chairs over
Right.
to get out. And,
it's like,
that's one of the big reasons why we want to do this too. Not just the Dybbuk box specifically, but because we watch those YouTube channels all the time, there are a lot of younger investigators especially who are interested in this, and we think that's great. That should be encouraged to try and learn more about this kind of thing.
right.
However, and this goes to entertainment value as well. More people are going to be interested if all the investigators are getting scared, obviously.
Right.
But if you go into a location expecting to be terrified, and then you hear something, that one sound terrifies you to the point where you think it's something evil, what are you creating? What kind of lasting impression are you leaving on that environment you're in?
Exactly.
And how is that going to affect future investigators who come through as well?
Right. And, for the way we feel is if you're going to get into an investigation, it should be for a desire to learn, a desire to really try and understand what's going on, and understanding that if there is energy left behind by people that used to once be living, that's not something to be afraid of. They just used to be people. It's actually should be a more of a this is a fascinating thing that we're able to even communicate with anyone who is no longer alive.
It should be like a mixture of wanting to learn the truth and wanting to understand things,
right,
while also accepting you won't know everything, that's out there. You'll never know the full extent of everything.
Right.
Because there's so much out there that defies what currently stands as logic.
Right.
But we know it exists. We see it every day. It happens.
If it wasn't, there wouldn't be podcasts like ours or a million other podcasts or a million other channels, YouTubes, all that people watch. And, the paranormal field is growing by leaps and bounds. So there's more and more interest all the time in all of these topics because, it is out there. And, when you were mentioning entertainment value, I mean, I think that brings us back to the Dybbuk box too, is that, you know, we've been fascinated with this story for a long time, but not just the original story, but the phenomenon that built after it. And, you know, there are certain YouTube channels where we have seen and used to maybe watch in the beginning until you see some of the ridiculousness. But the Dybbuk box is a big one that, you know, people will say, you know, opening Dybbuk box and it didn't go well or went horribly wrong as the big thumbnail.
Do not open.
Do not open,
And
but we did anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing. Or they make little mini movies about their opening of the Dybbuk box with cool angles and all this. And it's like, there's, you know, knowing that the original story, you know, may have had some basis in truth, but yet, again, it changes over time and all this stuff, you know, that there was one situation doesn't mean all of a sudden there's a million Dybbuk boxes out there just, you know, waiting to be opened.
Because why didn't anyone in the community know about this box until 2001?
Right.
If these boxes all existed out there all this time, you'd think that the paranormal community at some point would have caught on and gone, oh, you guys should pay attention to this. There's a demon in a box.
Oh yeah, and the things start to get like really built upon. You know, the original wine cabinet that this thing was in just had a lock on it. That's it. You know, it had some like interesting little items inside. That was it. Now it's like if there's a wooden type of box that has wax poured all over it and is all sealed, and then that's a Dybbuk box for sure. It's
and
like
there's some really weird things inside the box that, you know, are related to the actual spirit connected to it.
Exactly. Somewhere out there, someone even, I think, created a whole storyline of what you had to put inside a box to trap a Dybbuk in it.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this has been, you know, expounded upon since 2001.
And it's entertaining, but it's not based in truth entirely.
Right.
Because, like we said, we're not denying that this guy found this box at an estate sale, the original one, or that, you know, there could have been some intent put into it. We think maybe an intentional haunting.
Sure.
This guy probably didn't know this. I mean, again, intentional hauntings are not as widely discussed as, you know, the residual or the intelligent hauntings.
Right.
Which we do think those exist as well. Not every haunting is going to be an intentional haunting.
Right.
But this case sounds like it could have been a good example of that back in the day.
Sure.
And, you know, like anything else, people saw opportunity as soon as this story came out, and they pounced on it. Now, are Dybbuks real? We can't say for sure. Like we said, this is a lot to do with culture. And we have to be respectful of everyone's culture and belief.
Right.
We can't sit here and say this one thing is false and everyone else is right. Or vice versa. You know? This is not about whether or not the original Dybbuk in folklore is true or not. This is about the Dybbuk box.
Right.
And intentional hauntings versus what people perceive to be demonic.
You know, the demonic thing is a big one, because in the paranormal field, you know, it's I step back because I can say it's very rare that people actually come across a demon. You know, our belief isn't in demons in general.
At least not in the traditional sense.
Traditional, you know, Christian religious sense of, you know, demonic activity. But, you know, if you look at all on YouTube for anything paranormal, there sure are a lot of demons out there just waiting to be found, apparently. So
they're all targeting that investigator specifically.
Exactly.
You know,
there's, you know, of course, again, it's entertainment value. Yeah. So, you know, for us, the whole, you know, demon thing is, you know, not something that we're big believers in. But, you know, when it comes to anyone who likes to look for adventure and haunted items, you know, that's a big thing too. And the new crooks will tell you this over and over. But, you know, you shouldn't go out there and pay for a haunted item.
No.
You know, those items, number one, probably are not haunted.
Yeah.
You know, number two, if somebody has a haunted item and they don't want this haunted item, they should be looking for people like the New Kirks or someone who is able to handle those scenarios to take this and not just be selling it to somebody else who's just, you know, kind of curious, who wouldn't be able to handle a real, actual haunted object.
Yeah.
So
that's a good message, I think, to end it on too, because like Christina said, if you're looking to get into the paranormal, if you've ever wanted to look at a haunted object, don't pay for it.
Right.
Don't go on eBay. Don't go on Amazon. Don't go on any site where someone's saying, I have an object, you only have to pay $900 to own it. Because there are a lot of people who are taking advantage of those who are interested in the paranormal.
Yeah.
So look for someone like the Newkirks. We've even said on our own podcast, if you ever have a haunted object and you don't want it, feel free to hit us up, email us, message us.
Right.
If you want someone who's going to actually take the time to investigate it, we're free, we're available, but so are the Newkirks, and so are so many other people out there.
Right.
Take the time to do the research and not just, I'm going to put this on eBay and see who the highest bidder is.
Right, or throw it away or anything like that. I mean, I had somebody contact me a little while back about a Ouija board that they were afraid that they had pulled something through. Don't be afraid to reach out and contact someone, and we would be happy to try and help if we can. So keep that in mind. Don't believe that every Dybbuk box has a demonic spirit in it. That would be our advice. And I want to personally just give a shout out to a few of the different channels that we watch. Haunt Me, of course. That's a good one on YouTube that you could look up. We do recommend them. And again, we will watch certain channels for a little while until we kind of get a feel for it. The haunted side is one that is starting to get a little buzz going on, and I mention them because entertainment factor aside, I would much rather see people who are actually doing investigating the way an investigation would really go. Which sometimes you're not going to get anything. Sometimes what you're going to get is interesting more from an investigator's perspective than just people wanting to get jump scared. But
I always appreciate channels and investigators more who actively try and debunk something too.
Exactly.
So that they're trying to at least show, hey, we're not just hearing a noise and saying that's a ghost.
Right.
We're going to take the time to see what could have made the noise. Is this what you heard?
Right.
And if you can't explain it, that makes it all the better.
Exactly.
And so that's a good example too, the haunted side.
The haunted side is one. I mean, we do watch Twin Paranormal.
Yeah, they're a new one that has been pretty good.
Exactly. They're a crew of younger guys, very young guys. Of course, one is a pair of twins.
Yeah.
And a couple of other guys, and they're younger. They do get pretty excited about stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But I will say that at least the entire time they're actively trying to investigate using investigative tools, and not just, and they will try and debunk things. There's
a recent episode where there was a claim of a ball rolling down a set of stairs by itself, and they took the time to put the ball on the stair and jump around, try and move the area around it, try and find anything around the area that could naturally make that happen.
Right.
And they were able to show, okay, there's nothing here. Even if people are walking, the ball's pretty steady. It's not going anywhere.
Right. They put plenty of cameras on things so you can see things simultaneously. So for being a young crew, they are learning more and more all the time and doing the right things. So I will, can recommend them.
Because there are a lot of younger ones just like them who don't take the time to do that.
Exactly. There's plenty of them on YouTube that, do everything for jump scares and fear factor for a much younger, viewership. So shout out to Twin Paranormal.
Yeah.
And also always the Newkirks.
For sure.
Great professionals. And if you haven't seen their series Hellier, which is on YouTube but also available on Netflix now,
or Amazon Prime. Actually.
Amazon Prime, I'm sorry. Seasons 1 and 2, some of the most compelling paranormal investigations that we have ever seen. So you will be hooked, and most people who watch it are diehard.
It'll change the way you look at the paranormal too, because it makes you think about things. There's so much more to the paranormal than just what Hollywood puts out there, and because Hollywood's put it out there, it's become part of the culture, and everyone kind of starts to believe it.
Right.
But it's not always the case, and things are more connected than people even realize.
Right. Absolutely.
And they've really done a great job of helping expand that. The Newkirks, along with Connor Randall and Carl Pfeiffer, Tyler Strand.
Oh, yeah. Great crew.
Great crew, and I highly recommend it. They have a project coming out next year that is not Hellier related. It's actually related to a haunting. that is going to be pretty exciting to see. So there's more information coming soon. But we're excited. You guys should go check it out. I'll put links to everything down below, to all the channels we mentioned and to the New Quirks website.
Absolutely.
So you guys can go check that out. So.
All right. Well, now I just want to give a little sneak peek to something we have coming up that we're pretty excited about. We have done an episode before on the Yucca Man, which is another, every area has their version of Bigfoot, or their names for a Bigfoot type of entity. And out in our area where we live, the Yucca Man is one of those. And, we did our episode on the Yucca Man and had some very interesting stuff. Let me tell you, if you haven't listened to it, you should go back and do so. And we actually have out here a shaman that I know.
Yeah, out here in the Mojave Desert.
Right, that I've come to know, who has a lot of information on Bigfoot activity.
Yes.
Out here in the San Bernardino Mountains, and very knowledgeable on this topic.
Yes.
And I am going to be doing an interview with him very shortly for our next episode.
Very excited to hear this myself. So you guys are going to be in for a real treat. I've heard a lot about this guy, and he's got a lot of great stories and information and research that he's done. And I think Christina's going to get a great interview out of this. So.
Oh, yeah. So we definitely will have that coming up for you soon. So stay tuned, and thank you again for listening, and hopefully you'll become longtime listeners.
Yes, please check out the description for all those channels we mentioned, as well as our Medium page. We started a Medium page on the website Medium, where we're to start posting regularly paranormal articles. Folklore Thursday is going to be part of our lineup, but we also have, historical references to hauntings, UFO activity, cryptids like the Yucca Man, and so much more. So if you want to read articles like that, we already have a couple on there, and we're going to be publishing more in, the coming year.
So that's us. That's it. And thank you again, and we will talk to you all again very soon.
Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great week. And we'll talk again very, very soon.
All right. We're out.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.